Is a very prolific casting director, probably best known for casting the Marvel Cinematic Universe, starting with Iron Man back in 2008. But she's also been involved with a lot of very prestigious independent films, such as Three Billboards Outside of Ebbing, Missouri, and Crash. Many have gone on to win awards. Last year was a really big year for Sarah. She was casting 4 of the 5 largest grossing global films, including Avengers Endgame, the #1 film of all time. So congratulations. We are very fortunate to have Sarah here. And on behalf of the Asian World Film Festival, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
So let's jump right in. Obviously, we'd like to learn more about the casting process, your career, your personal experience, what attracted you to become a casting director. And for those who don't know, which are probably very few, what does a casting director actually do?
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. And thanks, everyone, for being here today, wherever you are around the world in this crazy time. It's nice to be able to spend some time with you. For those of you who don't know, I'll make this pretty quick. There's a very long version and a short version, but a casting director's job is really to find to the lead role or franchise lead. And along the way, really what we endeavor to do is understand the director's vision and support that vision and hopefully even exceed his or her wildest dreams for what the ensemble can be in a film and elevate the whole project through the casting. That involves auditions and breakdowns, speaking with agents, doing our research and outreach for every project, sometimes partnering with regional casting directors, having callbacks, screen tests. And then it also involves negotiating deals and figuring out people's schedules and all the nuts and bolts that go into it.
Great. And here, what's the most challenging film you've had to cast? And maybe there are a couple.
Yeah, basically every film. Every film is the most challenging film. The one I'm doing now is the most challenging film. You know, it's always a great unknown when you first start a project and meet with a director and read a script. There's an incredible excitement and a great unknown about leaping in. But I think there are many. You know, the independents certainly have their own sets of challenges, and one that comes to mind when you mentioned that to me in particular was Guardians of the Galaxy, which you wouldn't think would be a particularly challenging film, but I think that the expectations were so high after Avengers and the whole series and the films that had followed that were a bit darker. You know, Thor: The Dark World and Captain America: Winter Soldier, and Guardians was so radically different. On top of that, it featured a raccoon and a tree, you know, was one of, 2 of our lead characters, and nobody understood what it was. So finding the right actors to capture the right tone and spirit and kind of energize and take the universe into really the next phase post Avengers was daunting. It was challenging.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, right now we're obviously finding ourselves in a difficult time with COVID-19. And I'm sure everyone's curious as, how is the current situation affecting both the casting process, the acting profession, and how have you had to juggle and adjust your work to continue on with your job?
Yeah, that's an important question right now. Obviously, huge changes. But the good news is we are finding ways with, we're finding there's a lot of ingenuity that's arising out of the challenges that we're facing right now. And I never, ever thought I would spend so much time on Zoom, but it's working out. It's proving to be an effective way for us to carry on as casting directors. I know there's a lot of casting directors in the community who have been able to continue working all throughout the quarantine safely and effectively by holding auditions on Zoom, reading actors. A lot of casting directors are doing general meetings with actors, watching a lot of tape. And I think for actors...
Can I just interrupt? I'm told your webcam isn't on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah.
Hang on.
Hello?
Hi.
Okay. I think we're good. I guess we'll just try not to touch anything.
All right. All right. Do we have audio? Yeah.
So, yeah, we were just in the middle of the COVID-19 discussion. And if you don't mind, just starting over again.
That's okay. It must be part of the chaos that's happening in the world right now. I think that was a
Yes.
perfect demonstration of the challenges that we're facing. We're not in a room together, not able to communicate directly. So so I think the answer is we have to all be flexible. You know, we have to really be flexible. We have to stay patient and try to find the ways through the challenges, which are demonstrated right in front of us. But casting directors and actors, as well as filmmakers, are becoming really creative in how we approach it. And the good news is it's all continuing on. So I'm not sure how much of it you heard last time, but it is, auditions are still happening on Zoom.
So yeah, I mean, this whole virtual online casting, auditioning, is that as effective as seeing someone in person?
It's never the same as, you know, the best possible situation is to be in a room with an actor and a director and be able to react in real time and work things out to feel for each other. But it's a close second. So we're adapting in all kinds of ways. If it's a self-tape, we're making sure that we give lots of extra notes so the actors have a clear idea what we're looking for. And it's a Zoom audition. We can work just like we do in a room and do a number of takes and pick the one that everybody feels best about.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed we will do questions from the audience at the end, but that certainly was one question that many audience members had, was the self-tape. You know, how do I make the self-tape? Because it's even more important now. So, you know, the other thing is a lot of these movies now are global franchises. You know, they're being shot in Australia or New Zealand or Europe. And while you're casting the leads, you know, still largely, let's say, from the United States, there are actors coming from all over the world. So how do you work across multiple territories casting films? I mean, do you work with other casting agents in those local territories?
Often we do partner with a casting director who can cover a particular region for us. We've worked with a casting director in China. We've worked with a casting director in South Africa on Black Panther. We worked with a casting director in London. And often our searches are very global. So if we have a new character or a new role, we're able to look widely through self-tapes, through our own research, and through regional casting directors that we might engage in 5 or 6 different cities around the world to help us work with actors and put people on tape and get the best reading that we can for that particular role.
And let's talk a little bit about sort of the blockbuster versus the independent films. You know, you've cast both, one of the things I was curious about, you know, how is the process different? And have you come across an actor, you know, maybe in an independent film who you say, this is perfect, this person's perfect for it to be a superhero, or vice versa, maybe this person should be in an independent film?
Yeah, often, frequently. The process essentially is exactly the same. I would try to understand exactly what the director wants, what his vision or his or her vision is for the film, and find the absolute best actor for every single role in the movie. That doesn't change, whether it's $100 million or $1 million. You're really trying to creatively meet the challenge at hand. But of course, budget can affect resources, right? In terms of being able to hire casting directors in other cities. So you have to often get more creative if you don't have those resources, the budget, to look widely. And but fortunately, I do think the world is getting smaller in that sense. Artistic communities are more and more connected. And I think this is a question too that maybe you had down the line, but in a way, the fact that film festivals are going online now is incredibly exciting because we have access to see talent from around the world in our living rooms that we would never have been able to see, because a lot of those
just heard that Toronto and Venice, they're all collaborating in one virtual online platform. So
yeah.
I suppose in line with that too, streaming, you know, now the content is much more broadly dispersed and available to everyone. And, you know, some of the big studios have put directly on the streaming platform and skipped theatrical, while others are hoping to get them out there by August or September.
Yeah. As much as I love the movie going experience, I come from theater. I love the communal aspect of it, and I miss it terribly. There is a bit of a silver lining in that there's so much content that's being created for streaming because it's been so successful now in the last few months. So there's new filmmakers, diverse voices, people that have never gotten a chance to make stuff, and we're seeing a flood of content coming onto this small screen, which is opening up the doors for talent everywhere, I think.
So maybe talk a little bit about also what you're doing in TV or streaming, because that's a whole nother world. And obviously there's a casting process there, a lot of these Disney Plus shows and so forth. How is that taking up more of your time now? How is that different than the big feature films?
Yeah, it is different. It is different in a way because I think that you have a higher volume of actors or roles that you need to cast in a shorter period of time. But it's largely the same process. I don't find that there's a huge difference except the time frame that we're given. And so far, the only show that I've done that's come out has been The Mandalorian. I don't know how widely that has reached audiences, but that was incredibly fun. I've been working with Jon Favreau for over a decade, and it's always great to collaborate with him. And that one's been really exciting. And then Marvel has a number of streaming shows that are in the pipeline and hopefully will be coming out really soon.
Are there any other upcoming projects you can talk about that you're working on? No. I figured that.
No. But we're busy and I'm excited. I'm really excited to be able to share more and to have everybody see it. I think I feel good about it. I think that people are going to be excited about what's to come.
Yeah, and very, very excited to see new content for sure. Maybe just talk to the mentor role and then see if you can kind of provide our audience with some general advice and inspiration, information, whether they're actors or in the production community. I know we'll have some specific questions later on, but kind of what's your view on the macro situation, and what would you tell people, both actors, producers, and maybe even, aspiring directors?
Yeah, I think that, again, there's a real opportunity here for ingenuity. There are, it can be hard to self-create. So if that's not sort of where you're at, if you're not really at a place where you're ready to write or film or produce your own material, I think that it's also a great time to learn and study and really absorb all you can. And while things are a little quieter, push yourself, stretch yourself, watch National Theater Live, try Shakespeare or Moliere or John Patrick Shanley, or, test, if you're an actor, test yourself with material that you never thought you would do, because you can do it safely in your bedroom and you might discover something that's, a hidden passion. Or if you haven't done a lot of comedy, test that out. Like, you can really have room to experiment and push yourself to grow as an artist right now. And so that when things do start up, and they are, hopefully everything's going to be resuming at a greater pace than ever, I think, in a greater volume, you feel energized, you feel inspired, you feel good about where you are with your craft, and just kind of ready to get going and hit the ground running.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. Yeah. So do you think we're kind of at a tipping point in casting for more diverse actors, regardless of whether they're Black, Asian, Hispanic, or any other, ethnicity?
I think I hope, I'm always kind of an optimist. I hope we're past the tipping point. I feel like we've seen the tipping point. I feel like the floodgates are open, and it's really an exciting new day. I've been casting a long time, and I've never felt the kind of openness and energy and receptivity that exists right now in the industry. And I think you see it everywhere, with LGBTQ, with every possible background, race, ethnicity, with Ali Stroker winning the Tony on Broadway for Oklahoma. I think that people are hungry and wanting to see themselves represented on screen in every possible kind of entertainment. And I think that it's happening. I think the tipping point happened, and we're in it now. It's a great time.
And certainly, I assume a movie like Black Panther, which did phenomenal business, supports that as well.
I think Black Panther and Crazy Rich Asians in the same year, and then incredible films like The Farewell and everything else we've seen coming out. I think it's really ushered in economic success, which is motivating to the studios and audience. It's resonated with audiences. So.
And then Parasite, which.
Yeah.
which is really a foreign film. So yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So that's
Absolutely.
like, I mean, you know, you were a juror at the Asian World Film Festival in the fall,
Yeah.
and you know, our mission is to show films from all across Asia. That's some 50 countries,
Yeah.
and get a higher profile for them and a broader audience. Do you? Is there anything you sort of gleaned from that, and what, you know, we could do better to, especially promote Asian film in this country?
You know, I think, you know, referencing Parasite is a great example. That film was widely seen, widely enjoyed, widely acclaimed by, you know, critics and the public alike. And I do think that everything we're talking about now, the possibility of putting film festivals online, or at least certain selections that you want to highlight, is a great option if that's productive, you know, for the festival. And I think that just, again, getting awareness out, having the actors talk about it, having people um, just increasing awareness in every way. But I hope that it's a more receptive world, you know, every year.
Yeah, and I mean, you're involved, you know, with women's rights, with women in film and Times Up and so forth. And imagine you might have some thoughts, you know, in terms of how what you're doing in those two groups to support women, that could be transferred to, you know, casting more diverse actors in terms of ethnicity and where they come from.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important. It's being talked about and acted on a lot. One of the things specifically that I did in the last year was co-lead a group for women in film that was a mentoring group. And that's really specifically for writer, director, actor, creators, because I think that casting directors could be a more diverse group. And I think the Casting Society of America is hopefully working on that. There's not a lot of formal training. So there's a lot of apprenticeship and mentorship that goes on. And there's a very conscious outreach that's occurring now for the CSA launching its own training program and trying to get the word out that casting is actually a profession and a career. We don't have our own Oscar, but there's actually a lot of work and it's a great career. And for whatever reason, I think we've just come onto the public radar and the industry radar in a bigger way in the last few years. So that's happening from the casting community. But I think that what really needs to happen is elevating more women and women of color to positions in the writer's room, as directors, as producers, as crew members behind the scenes, so that we as casting directors are receiving a different pipeline of content. There's only so much that we can do with the script that we're given, but as those stories continue to change, I think we will see more diverse actors on screen.
Sure, that makes sense. I mean, if the role is not written towards a certain person, then you have to make those decisions. But if
Yeah. And we'll always advocate for the most diverse group of options for any role. We'll always be advocating for that. But yes, it can be, I just think it would be great to have more stories told that are reflecting different experiences and different backgrounds.
I think we're on our way. So yeah,
I think so. I think so.
So let's turn to some of the audience questions. We had quite a lot of questions, and there are many that overlap. And, you know, one of the primary questions, this one's from Eileen Chen, but there were a lot of other people who had a similar question. What makes an actor stand out more at the end of the day? And what is the hook that several candidates are equally strong at the audition? What is it that grabs you? This is the person when you see so many people.
All right. Well, that's a big question. I think that the first thing I would say to actors is be as fully authentic in your point of view and in your connection with the character as you can. There's no right way to bring a character to life. The only way is to bring it to life through your own heart, your own passion, your own intelligence, your own life experience. So when you do that, you're bringing a unique character to life. Beyond that, our job is to find actors who could all do the role. Once you get to that place, if you're screen testing for a part, everyone already feels you could play it, but that's where it gets into something very subjective and subtle and nuanced. And it's almost like there's an alchemy that has to happen with the director, with the writing, with the ensemble that you're building. and with the way everything comes together. And that's really not something an actor can control. All you can control is the work that you do and what you bring to it. And you have to kind of trust that the right role is going to be yours. But once it gets to that stage, I think the ultimate decision about who's going to get cast in the part has to do with so many factors. They say it's sort of the stars aligning, but it really is that cohesion, the coming together of the director's vision, the writer's words, the actor's point of view, and all the other elements, potentially the chemistry with other actors that really bring it to life and have that spark.
And then there, you know, in line with this, there were a number of questions about the self-tapes from Yutaka Takeuchi and Tori M. You know, what is on the tape that stands out? What should you do? What should you not do? Is there any practical advice you can offer?
I think that, again, there's two sides of this. On the one hand, now you're going to be self-taping at home, so you don't have the feedback. On the other hand, maybe it's a more relaxed environment for you, which is a positive. And I think with the self-tape, the key is to do work that you feel really connected with and good about and have ownership of. And again, not just trying to lay it down quickly or lay it down in a way that you think is perfect or right. Lay it down in a way that reflects what you have to bring to that role. I'm not sure if that's specific enough, but I think that as long as we can see you and hear you, you don't need to worry too much about production values. That's somebody else's job. What we really want to see is your specific connection with the character. Mm-hmm. And then one little pet peeve is like, probably don't eat a cheeseburger. Like,
yeah, brush your teeth.
It works not as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's very tough not being an actor, because even now, you know, for many job interviews, everything is done online and people are kind of just talking without a lot of feedback a lot of the time, you know?
Yeah.
It's got to be difficult.
I think the other thing is ask for what you need as an actor. Don't be shy about asking, you know, the casting director, the theater director, the agent, whoever you're in contact with. What are they looking for? Are there any tips? Is there any other context that you can give me about this role or about the project? Ask for what you need. And maybe that not always you're going to get a response back, but sometimes you will, and that could be really helpful.
And then Anna Lopez is asking, how do international actors get on your radar, you know, if they're not repped by an agent?
Hi, Anna. There are different ways. I think that there are times we put out breakdowns on something called Actors Access, which is open for everyone to submit regardless of agents. We do a lot of research, and one way to get on our radar is to be in a film festival, to be in a short film, to be in theater productions. We really comb through a lot of material and looking for actors that are emerging all over the world. So I think that's a great way to do it. And I think that if you have an online presence and you can attach a great video, a great piece of work, then if we find you, we can instantly get a sense of your work and your breadth of work and your range.
And this is from Hyunjin Jo. What attracts you to a particular project that makes you want to be part of it?
I think for me, it's a lot about the filmmaker and their passion and their point of view and the opportunities that I would have as a casting director to bring new talent and interesting talent to the project.
And then these are kind of opposite questions from CJ Chang and Sergio Juarez. You know, any thoughts you can share for actors who've begun pursuing an acting career later in life? And what advice do you have for brand new actors?
All right. Probably the same thing. Commit, believe in yourself, and work hard. Like you have the calling to do this. You have the passion. So put the work behind that passion. Even if it's later in life, you can act until you're 90 years old or more if you have the energy and the stamina to do it. So it doesn't matter. There's so many actors that started later in life, but know that it's important to put in the work behind it. It doesn't just happen like that, or when it does, it's usually an overnight success after 20 years. So really hone your craft, know what your range is, test yourself, challenge yourself, so that when the opportunities come, you're ready to enjoy them and make the most of them.
And here's two questions from Courtney Cato and Paul Torado. They're both asking, with the new technology that we're using to cast actors and audition actors, will things go back to normal? Let's say COVID-19 is a long lost memory next year. Will we go back to the way we did things before? Or is this going to change everything because it's maybe easier to do it this way, or we just become used to it?
I think that it'll be somewhere in the middle. I think that I really hope we go back to it, and I think we will, because I think it's kind of in our DNA as artists to want to collaborate and to have that collaboration and the fruits of that collaboration. So I really believe and hope that we are going to go back to a more personal contact and a personal way of working together. But I also think that we've discovered things with this new way of working, such as access, really global access to talent that's invaluable. And I hope that stays as well.
And Zalishko Zik is asking, how many people do you interview on average before making a selection?
Great question. There's a huge range. When I was talking a little bit about what a casting director does, and I said, auditions, we could talk about that for an hour. It depends on the project and the way you're approaching it. There's times when we've considered one person for a part, and there's times when I've seen thousands and thousands of people for one part. So it depends a lot about what the director has in mind, what the role calls for, and what the intention is.
Then from Maria Castillo, how do you work with independent producers, and what type of deals do you set up with them? I mean, I know you do mainly studio movies, but you do independent films as well.
Yeah, I'm almost always doing an independent film. It's kind of like my first love is theater and character-driven dramas. And although I love playing on the big landscape with Marvel, I also do independent films. And so it's really for me about material. If it's material that I respond to, then we find a way to work it out.
And then Ginny Huang is asking, what are some tips for new filmmakers working with casting directors, and how to avoid common mistakes?
One tip I would say is please try to keep an open mind. I think one of the biggest mistakes that can be made in the casting process is to limit yourself to one kind of thinking. The first mentor I had in casting, whenever she got an audition page, she would take a big black Sharpie and just put a Sharpie through anything that had any kind of description, tall and thin, mean and scowling, anything that described a character, she would eliminate. And then she would see the widest section of actors she could think of. And I learned that from her. And I've always taken that into the process, because sometimes as a director or producer, you can have a very specific idea, but that might limit you from seeing somebody who could be just incredible in the role. So keep an open mind.
Mm-hmm. And Adrian Dev is asking, when can we start seeing more Asian Americans in lead roles in blockbuster superhero movies?
Very, very soon. As soon as movie theaters can open. Very soon. Yeah.
Yes, Mulan, I suppose.
Yep. Yeah, it really can't.
And here's an interesting question from Burson Tebak. If you had a time machine and were working as a casting director in a classic movie made in the past, which one would you want to go for or be involved with?
Hi, Burson. Great question. That is so hard. Split jury. I think it would have been amazing. My childlike self would have loved to be involved in Star Wars, the very first one, because I just think to have been involved with a film like that was so groundbreaking and has affected generations of people would be meaningful. And there's so many great stories from that legendary casting director. If you guys haven't heard, please look them up. She's a delight. Of course, if I had cast that one, I don't know if it would have been Harrison Ford, because I think he was actually like building shelves in her office, and that's how he ended up auditioning. So amazing stories around Star Wars. I would have loved to work on that. But I also grew up on dramas, and some of the early dramas that blew my mind were like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest or The Godfather. Those are just incredible films with massive, amazing casts and impact.
Then Braden Maniago is asking, what is the future of casting? I mean, we've touched upon this, but I guess this is a broader question.
Yeah. I think the future of casting is very global. It's hopefully more diverse. I think we'd love to see, more people of color in the casting profession and have more global reach. I think that will become the norm. I think we're setting a new normal now in the way that we're going about it. And I think that it would be great to see that continue. I think there's more and more demand for casting directors as the streaming shows proliferate. And I think that it's nice that casting directors are starting to get a little more recognition with the BAFTAs now. And I think that's helping people understand the importance of our role and our contribution in the films and content that we are a part of.
I mean, with just tagging on to what you're saying, do you see yourself perhaps in the future casting a foreign language film?
Yeah, I did cast a film that was all in Arabic. That was at the Venice Film Festival. It hasn't been released here yet. But what I realized was that as a casting director, once we've heard a scene 100 times, here's a little insider secret. Once you've heard it 100 times, you're really looking more at the choices that an actor makes, the subtext that they bring to it, the personal experience that they bring to a character. You stop hearing the words as much. So as much as I was a little bit daunted by the challenge of casting a film in Arabic, I learned that there's universal truths about what we're looking for. And of course, I collaborated with Arabic casting directors and producers and advisors and actors during the process. So I would love to do more of that. It was thrilling. Yeah.
So that was an Arabic project, not a US project, or?
It was a US producers and director, but it was shot in Arabic.
That's interesting. I mean, I'm guessing, with the streaming platforms, especially, a lot of shows made now, starting with Narcos, there are a number coming out of India and so forth that are in multiple languages, where the people speak what they would speak from where they're from. And that is becoming more and more accepted, even by Americans, who are subtitle and dubbing phobic. The streaming platforms have contributed largely to that. So I'm guessing casting directors' roles will become more international just because of that.
Yeah. And by the way, that extends to the deaf community. I think that, there'll be more deaf actors on screen. And I think that it's our job to be as fluent as possible in as many languages as we can.
Well, this has been great. Any last words of advice or any parting thoughts?
I hope I answered everybody's questions. I hope I was able to shed a little bit of light and motivation, because I do think that this is, as much as it's a challenging time, it's a time that's full of potential. And so I would just encourage you to create, express yourself, challenge yourself, and know that hopefully we're all back at it really, really soon.
Thank you so much, Sarah. This has been very helpful and a pleasure. Thank you for making the time and joining us.
Yeah.
Okay. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.